since the new update. Doesn't look right. Doesn't fill the whole screen of the phone. Like, strange. Strange. I am really struggling, you guys. You know, I see all these. There's a guy called Guy Anderson, and I wonder if I can share with him real quick. Hang on a second. All right, that's better. So, all right, so there's a guy. Met him through Facebook. His name is Guy, and his name's Guy Anderson. And if you're associated with any sort of Tartaria groups or anything like that, you have probably seen his work. He does some really great work. He Nikola Tesla and the Cabbage Patch. I think that's the title of his book. It's sold a bunch of copies. Like he's done really good work, and he does podcasts, and like when you want to talk about sort of Tartaria stuff, that's probably one of the guys you should go talk to. He knows his shit. But that's where my issue comes in. I sent him the thing that I put in the description of my videos recently, at least. You know, it's a little paragraph. It's a copy and paste paragraph, and it says, "This is the evidence you're always asking for yet refusing to watch. If we say the same things this movie that they made is saying, bragging about, it's called anti-Semitism because people are stupid and don't know what words mean. Yet they say it and you fall for it. How does oppression equate to direct and unrivaled success? If this doesn't prove that winners write the history, IDK what? I don't know what does." And then I share with them Hollywoodism. And so I shared it with Guy, and he was like, I don't get it. What do you mean? And it's interesting because you would think, like, I know, like, he's probably like me and he gets sent a bunch of shit all the time. But, I feel like between him and we have a Guy connection for sure. But I feel like, I've earned the right to be able to say, hey, this is significant. You might want to check it out. And you check it out. Because I don't do that. I don't send people a bunch of different videos to watch all the time and all that. And really, at this point, like, if I'm going to have you do stuff, I'm going to have you look up things like the Samson option and Operation Cast Thy Bread and Team Jorge, shit like that. I want you to look at what they want you to know. Because that's this thing that people just don't seem to understand. Oh, hey, let me try this too. So there's another guy that I know. His name's Donnell. And he was actually a friend of a friend. Actually, I haven't seen Aisha in a long time. But this is another person where I shared that thing, and he was like, "What do you mean I refuse to watch it?" Blah blah. I've never, and I do realize that the writing of the thing might make it sound like I am directly addressing you, and you know, I guess it was kind of written that way. But he's another person where, you know, he says he's a descendant of the Jays, and he posted something today about some sort of historical narrative about Christianity. I can't even remember what it was. I wish he'd come here and tell us what it was. But I commented on his thing, says who? And he said, "What do you mean?" And it's like it's really crazy to me how people don't seem to understand that. Even Guy, the Cabbage Patch and Nikola Tesla guy, they don't seem to like get it. You know, there's a reason why Tartaria blew up in the last couple of years. There's a reason why guys like Billy Carson just sort of appeared and suddenly they're everywhere. And to me, I've been saying it since the beginning. Tartaria is the best distraction, one of the best distractions they give us. It's actually probably it tops it just because, you know, the pedo stuff is still a distraction, but it's one of those ones that you have to be careful. You know, it's a sensitive subject. You don't want to, you know. But Tartaria is something that there's literally no bad about it. You know, you start explaining where the big buildings come from, the churches, the castles, the you know. But at the same time, it shows you how ignorant people are to history. I mean, I think of myself in that same category. Even a year ago, I didn't know half the shit I know now. I had no idea a year ago that there were pneumatic tube systems all over the place. Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to do. Yeah, here we go. We have another dumb J here. This guy's, no apostrophe, a fool. Yeah. Well, then you should be easily able to debunk everything I say, shouldn't you? I was talking about this yesterday. Did you guys know that in Dirty Dancing, Patrick Swayze, 34-year-old Patrick Swayze, is playing a 25-year-old guy while, what's the J Broad's name? Jennifer Grey is 27 playing a 17-year-old. Do you guys know that? Do you guys know that Dirty Dancing, that's such a great, it's about a summer love affair between, a summer romance between a 17-year-old and a 25-year-old. That's fucking gross. If you're 25 and you're dating 17-year-olds, you're gross. If you're
that people were okay with it, I think at the time was because she looked so old.
No,
she looked like a kid.
No, it's because everything was like that back then. They this idea of, you know, protect the children is sort of a newer one. But like when you think about that, and you think about how well received and remembered that movie is, like if you're, when I was 19, I think, I went to Schoolcraft College, and my girlfriend was 17, and she was still in high school. And just the idea that I was in college and my girlfriend was in high school was so fucking weird to me.
Yep, as a girl in high school, if you're a junior or senior, man, that's what you want as a college kid.
Right.
It's so creepy.
But like I mean, her and I broke up, and it was mutual. It wasn't mutual. She was upset about it, but she was understanding. She was a cool chick, so she was understanding. And I was just like, look, I'm sorry. I can't date a high school girl when I'm in college. That's just weird. And it's not like college lasted a really long time. But still. Hey, look, we have people correcting other people. Trolls correcting trolls. Love it. Yes, it's not a bong. No better way to acknowledge that you're a square than calling a pipe a bong. A bowl, a bong. But like, I didn't realize it. I just saw something on Dirty Dancing, and I just thought to look it up. Like, again, it's one of these things where I could have looked it up, and it could have been harmless. It could have been she was 18, and he was 20, 21, whatever. That would have been a little different. But I just think if you're not living at home and you're dating somebody who has to ask whether they can leave the house, that has a curfew, that has parents to answer to, something's wrong there. Something's fucking wrong. Yeah, but I couldn't see the whole. Yeah, right. Could you hear the bong rip? No, now you're just being stupid. Bongs make noise. So I stumbled across this video yesterday, which I thought was strange because, I was talking about it yesterday, and how did we ever get to the point where we keep time, And so I stumbled across this video, and it's about the Paris pneumatic clock system. Did you know that Paris had a pneumatic clock system? Check this out. This is an interesting fucking video.
January 1910, when a flash flood brought chaos to the city. Metro.
Okay, so first of all, we start off with it's January 1910, and a flash flood has brought chaos to Paris. So what you don't do, though, when you look at these old videos, okay, so you go, this is 1910, right? Look at the structures. Does any of that look new?
No.
Looks actually significantly old, doesn't it? I mean, some parts it's falling apart. It's so old. So think about how interesting it is. I mean, and again, you just don't, this is, so this water's deep enough to have boats in it. So you would think this water's at least a few feet tall. The first story looks like it's one of those standard, like almost 2-story first stories, where the first story is real big. Then you have 1 story, 2 story, 3, 4 stories on top of that. Who was building all of this? So then let's watch.
This is Paris on the 21st of January, 1910, when a flash flood brought chaos to the city. Metros were flooded and buildings were destroyed. But more curiously, almost all the clocks around the city stopped at exactly 10:50, as if time itself had stopped amidst the chaos. These clocks were part of a special network of underground pipes that used bursts of air to synchronize time around the city. This genius system was created in 1880 by Austrian engineer Victor Popp, and just 5...
Okay, Austrian engineer, so basically Germans. Again, it's German. Or what did it say? 1860? I don't remember. Something like that. This dude invents a pneumatic clock system that thousands of clocks around the city are on this system, because again, they didn't have like batteries, they didn't have like electricity. So they had to come up with a way to keep time, so everybody was on this. Let's just watch.
Years later, thousands of these clocks were placed all over the city, in hotels, train stations, houses, schools, and public streets. We modeled this incredible system and the special machine at the heart of it.
They modeled it. They made a model.
A series of underground pipes and mechanical clocks kept an entire city in sync. Before the
I love how we're just so okay with underground pipes in 18 whatever. Connecting to houses, hotels, and everywhere. All of these pipe systems were connected to this. How were they doing this? Who the fuck was doing this?
Of accurate electrical clocks, time was hard to keep. Mechanical clocks would slowly drift out of sync, leaving everyone on slightly different times. Business meetings and train schedules were impossible, since no one would arrive at the right time. In fact, the idea of there being an exact time wasn't really a thing yet. Tower bells around the city would ring out to let people know which hour it was. But as cities became more civilized, knowing the time to the nearest hour was no longer good enough.
All those people scared of the sun.
A way to make sure everyone was on the same time. Down.
Look at those buildings. Again. This is the 18-somethings. Look at the city they live in. Look at how do you build that building right there? That with the round and all that. Look at just all the way back, all the columns, all the big granite, all that shit. How did they do that? Where'd they bring this in? How did they bring this in? You see that they're using horses and buggies. Do we all just think that, many tons worth of granite can be put on a buggy that has wheels and a horse can just pull it? I mean, it's wild. Look at that fucking city. Who built that city prior to 18-something? You dumb bitch. How did you just do that quickly? Jesus Christ.
The idea was to have a master clock in the center of Paris that would send out a pulse each minute to synchronize every clock around the city, sending the signals electronically.
The flood of Noah, somebody says.
So that sending reliable. The clocks would have to be powered.
Listen to this.
Would simply move all the clocks in the system at the same time.
Exactly.
This idea had been tested out in Vienna a few years before, and it clearly demonstrated.
Okay, so it's not even a new idea. This idea had been tested in Vienna 3 years earlier, 1877. We're all far too okay with these narratives. They don't make any sense.
Having everyone on the same the future. So the government of Paris.
Look at the buildings. Don't look at the people walking. Look at the buildings.
To provide time to Paris, the pneumatic clock company set up shop in the center of Paris and began working on the master clock.
There's the master clock. The thing is too, so they get, come on. They get the contract and they just do it. They just set up the master clock in the middle of town. Wait till you see how intricate this thing is.
Take the move and just do it.
They just did it. They just did it.
Extremely precise clock that could run 24/7 without going out of sync.
Oh yeah. Other clocks couldn't, but this could.
We need to understand the general principles of mechanical clocks. In order to run without electricity, a spring or weight was typically used to provide energy. By raising a weight, energy is stored in the form of potential energy. When it is released, gravity pulls it down and the wheel
Gravity.
spins.
Gotta love that gravity. So it's not the weight pulling itself down because the weight is heavier than the air around it. It's gravity. Do you know how silly that is?
A couple seconds would be useless.
And you know how they say, oh, it's the same. If you drop a fucking marble and a watermelon from a building, everything falls at the same rate. Really? Drop a feather. Drop something that's not round and see how that works.
An escapement mechanism is added to slow down the weight and create a continuous pulse.
See, the thing about this is, again,
The escapement rocks back.
so you see this shit and you're like, yeah, that makes all the sense. Yeah, whatever, that makes sense. Right? And yet nobody says, who the fuck was building those tiny little gears? How are they manufacturing these little parts and shit? And to think somebody had to go, okay, it's got a design, we got to do like this, we got to do, and they drew it out and then they gave it to somebody else who then manufactured it. This is crazy.
Back and forth like a pendulum, moving the gear at constant intervals and slowing down.
We've been lied to about everything. If you think that we've been lied to about everything, then how do you still believe in Jesus?
length of the pendulum, the clock can be tuned to run faster or slower. Adding a train of high-ratio gears slows down the system even more, making the weight can power the clock.
Making all of those gears. And to think like, okay, so they built these gears and they had these weights so that it would work out exactly. How? I mean, you would think if the gear was a half an inch bigger, then everything would be off. If the teeth were a little bit like everything has to be exactly perfect in the 1880s for this to work out. And look at this fucking thing. Really? Somebody figured out that exactly a wheel this size with exactly a wheel this size and this size, that's all good. And then for that weight, you have to have a weight on there that weighs X amount of ounces or whatever it is. Like, do you realize how interesting, I guess it is, to think that people just sort of accidentally into this?
Master clock, it was split into two separate sides. On the left was a standard pendulum clock.
It's called math, right? Right. So you can write out on a piece of paper the math necessary to figure out how. I'd love to see you do it.
My math's just called math.
My math's just called math. But I mean, think about it. So you're saying somebody's like, okay, if I do a drive wheel that's X plus a this thing, like. Math doesn't work in that. That takes practicality. That takes trial and error. You can't just math that all together. You have to figure it out.
Minute and second hands. The clock on the right was basically a timer that would control when to release the bursts of compressed air into the network of clocks.
Right, the compressed air that they just had in 1880.
In the Paris Observatory,
where was this compressed air?
Super accurate clock that was updated daily using observation. Would update the master clock if necessary, using as a reference in order.
So there's another clock observatory where they look at all the stars and planets and they go, oh, it's 9:51, not 9:48. Go ahead, make that adjustment based on the stars and shit. Do you know how silly that is?
To see the observatory clock, which was in a different part of Paris, the timekeeper used any desk, which gave him remote access to the clock's device. And in order to at the start of each minute, and the speed is light, and they also have every clock around Paris, and they also have tailor-made plans.
I don't give a shit about any desk.
Any
desk. Let anybody onto your computer at any time. Just be careful.
In order to synchronize every clock around Paris, the master clock had to be extremely precise. Both sides of the clock worked together to send out bursts of air to thousands of clocks connected to the system. At the start of each minute, the left-hand clock would start counting down, while the right-hand clock would be locked in place by a lever. Once the left clock reached the 60th second, a tooth at the top gear activated the lever, which released the right clock and allowed its gears to start spinning. Instead of an escapement to limit the speed, the right clock had a simple fan fly, which used its own drag to slow the gears down. This would allow the clock to run for about 20 seconds until the lever locked back in place. When the gears turned, a rod attached to one of the main gears was activated. This
Look at all these details.
would allow compressed air to flow into the distribution pipe. The valve would remain open for the first.
They're not going to tell you where the compressed air comes from. Think about how much compressed air you have to move a bunch. I mean, and again, all the air is going to escape, right? But throughout a city with thousands of different outlets for this air, how much air would have to be pushed through? It's like if you grab a hose and you blow on it, the person on the other side doesn't go, whoa, whoa, that was a big breath. If you blow really, really hard, depending on how short the hose is, you might be able to feel it. But like, we're talking about miles and miles of tunnel system underneath Paris, which again, We're not going to address how they built these tunnel systems underneath Paris. Underneath. But you guys, I'm crazy. I'm the crazy one.
Seconds of each minute and closed for the remaining 40 seconds. This created a 20-second period every minute where air could flow to all the clocks in the network. One of the best things about this entire system was its ability to reset itself once the weights had fallen. A thin pipe leading off from the distribution pipe fed the compressed air back into two pistons at the side of the clock. This would raise two levers attached to both clock systems, lifting up the weights and resetting both clocks without interrupting the cycle. But where did the air go after leaving the master clock? From there, the air would split into 10 different pipes that were each assigned to different districts around Paris. These would carry the air into iron pipes that ran for hundreds of kilometers through the sewage and metro tunnels of Paris. As the compressed air entered the pipes,
through the sewage and metro tunnels of Paris. Are we just go, yeah. Yeah, the 1800s people were really capable of building underground sewage and metro tunnels. And so are we saying that they actually did deal with their sewage in Paris? They didn't just dump it in the fucking water like everybody else did? That's weird.
Would quickly start sending a pressure wave through the entire system, taking up to a minute to reach some of the furthest clocks. But what actually happened when the air reached the clock? The clocks themselves were very simple. The minute hand was connected to a gear that had exactly 60 teeth. As the air reached the clock, it entered into a bellows, which would inflate and push a rod upwards. This lifted the main lever, which pushed the gear along with an articulated tooth. On the other side, another tooth stopped it from moving backwards. Once the bellows fell back down, the tooth would pivot, and a small weight would keep it engaged with the gear. This clever
So again, it's the 1800s. They go around. They said they sell the service for what would equate to 30 cents a day by today's money, which is actually a lot of money to be able to know the time. But so you have all of these places where the air then comes through. It's not like it's then fed back into the loop after it goes through the clock. So these air pressure waves are just... What is creating all of this air pressure? Pressurized air seems like that would be a difficult thing. And then again, so what they do is they go to the person's house and they say, would you like a clock? And the person's like, hell yeah, I do. So then they build a special clock to the specifications that person wants, remember, because not everybody's going to have the same clock. Then somebody runs iron tubing from that clock into the wall. I don't fucking know. Into the wall and then down into the sewage pipes where they then connect it into the system because they would have to take out one pipe and then put in a new T pipe. Can you imagine how much that would disrupt the system every time they had to install a new clock? If I'm being stupid here, by all means, just fucking make it sound more realistic to me. But this video is going to yada yada over a lot of this shit. And that's what you're going to see more often than not, is there's going to be lots and lots of details, mundane, stupid details that you know. And the poet made the parody, and he wrote a couple of lines in 1835. Like, that's the kind of shit you're going to get. Not, how the fuck did they just come up with this? This Austrian engineer just, what? He was just like, hey, Parisian prince, like, or king or whatever, yo, I got this clock system I'm going to run throughout the whole city. And, you know, I mean, just, it all be connected to the master clock that's based off of the observatory clock. That is fucking silly, man. That's fucking silly.
pivot, and a small weight would keep it engaged with the gear. This clever mechanism meant that a full inflation of the bellows would always push the gear forward by exactly 1 minute. The hour hand was connected to the minute.
So think about that still. So somebody had to sit there and design the bellows to be exactly perfect. And an inch too big, an inch too small, it's not going to do that. So how many different units did they have to go through before they realized, and how do you get an equal pressure of air to go through the whole system? By the time the air at the front of the system reaches the back of the system, it's probably lost a little bit of steam. How does that all work? Don't worry, this won't tell us.
What? Yeah.
Gear using a ratio of 1 to 12.
1 to 12.
The minute hand would complete 12 rotations.
Oh,
time
yeah.
It took the hour hand to complete 1.
Yep.
The great thing about this system was that it wasn't just for public street clocks or train stations. Anyone could have these clocks installed in their house for a subscription fee of just 30 cents per day.
Wouldn't matter where you lived. They could just install one of these air clocks in your house. So, let's say you're rich and you have a house way out in the middle of the country.
$90 a month back then is a lot of money.
Well, 30 cents a day by today's money. So I don't know what that means. I mean, remember, people used to pay $1 a day to go into the dangerous fucking tunnel system. 800 to 1,000 people per day would come see the tunnel system and pay $1 to go walk through the construction sites, and
They didn't.
1,000 people per day.
Gives a fuck.
Well, I mean, just think about, how do you, in the 18 somethings, 1,000 people per day? Where are they coming from? How are they getting there? What amazing travel systems did we have that people were like, hey, you want to go check out the Thames Tunnel today? And they were like, oh, well, it's only about an hour and a half away on the, horses.
Ass, horse, and carriage.
Is money. Despite being damaged in the Great Flood of 1910, this incredible system continued to work.
Of course it did.
50 years.
50 years.
In 1927, when accurate electronic
1927, around the time everything seems to have changed. Around the time we go from being these really capable people who can build incredible skyscrapers in a year.
It could happen.
No, it couldn't. No, it really couldn't.
clocks were good enough to keep time. By now, these clocks are long gone, but signs of where these clocks once stood can be found all around Paris.
And then look at that.
Now, time
That's
for the primal
the
space giveaway. By now,
the
these
old
clocks are long
system
gone.
is them making a goofy face at you. It's a smiley face. Yeah, that's the whole proof that those used to be there.
Time for the primal space giveaway. The winner of the previous
And that's that. That is that. That's all you get. There's no explanation on how. You'll never get that. You'll never get any sort of information on how these incredible fucking random people changed our world. It's really kind of crazy. Let's see. All right, let's check out time. I wanted to check this out. All right. Time is the continuous progression of existence that occurs in an apparently irreversible succession from the past through the present and into the future. It is a component quantity of various measurements used to sequence events, to compare the duration of events or the intervals between them. You know what I love? I love this idea that if you go to space and then you come back, everyone will be a lot older, but you won't have aged as much. They make it sound like the whole narrative that time is based on the sun and the earth is fucking stupid, really. Because it's not like we have 12-hour day, 12-hour night, so you could figure that out. And the fact that the 24-hour system just happens to work out, that should show you that something else is kind of going on here. But time is literally measurement. It's a unit of measure. It's not it's not some like enigma force or some shit. It's a unit of measure. It's like inches, you know. A second is cha, 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 like that. You know, sure, maybe I'm getting it wrong by the microsecond. I'm missing it, but that shit doesn't matter. It's just like saying, you know, this is an inch. Well, if you really get down to the micro blah blah blah, you're actually 0.128 microtrons off of an inch. You know, shit like that. But seconds are like inches. There are 60 seconds in a minute. There are 60 minutes in an hour. There are 24 hours in a day. This is an exact system. So why would leaving the planet affect that even a little bit? You're still on the same system. And where did that even come from? It's not like anybody's left the planet for a long period of time and come back and everybody was younger. Or I mean, everybody was older. How the fuck do we, like, where did that even, what kind of science fiction bullshit is that? Let's see. It is a component quantity of various measurements used to sequence events, to compare the duration of events or the intervals between them, and to quantify rates of change of quantities in material reality or in the conscious experience. Man, they sure are trying to make it sound a lot more grandiose than, it's like inches. Time is often referred to as the fourth dimension, along with three spatial dimensions, right? Three spatial dimensions, you know, up, down, left, right, in and out, that whole thing, like 3D, right? But then there's time. And time isn't part of those dimensions, it's a different dimension. Scientists have theorized a beginning of time in the universe, the Big Bang, and an end, heat death, or the Big Crunch. I've never heard of the Big Crunch before. A cyclical model describes a cyclical nature, whereas the philosophy of eternalism views the subject from a different angle. I mean, it's so embarrassing. I hate to say it. I've said it for the last, it's been about a month or so since I first realized it, but I hate it because the religious narrative is fucking stupid. It's dumb. It's not true. It's dumb. But it makes more sense than the Big Bang. The Big Bang is really fucking stupid. Like when you step away from I believe this because it goes against the church, and you just sort of question it with the same skepticism that you do the church, you realize it's almost the same story, except it's dumber. Time is one of several fundamental physical quantities in both the International System of Units, SI, and the International System of Quantities. The SI base unit of time is the second, exactly, which is defined by measuring the electronic transition frequency of caesium atoms. That is dumb. That is dumb. Now we're measuring atoms, huh? Amazing how they happen to come up with all this shit before they could measure atoms. General relativity, there we go, we're bringing the J's in, is the primary framework for understanding how space-time works. Through advances in both theoretical, you guys understand what theoretical means? When somebody brags because they're a theoretical physicist or something like that.
Oh, you play pretend all day?
Right.
You play Dungeons and Dragons all day too?
Literally, that's all they do. They're like, well, there are planets out there. where it actually rains methane diamonds. Huh. Can you imagine that? It rains methane diamonds. That's the kind of shit they do. Theoretical and experimental investigations of space-time through theoretical and experimental investigations. Meaning, there's no like factual basis behind it. They can't, it's not like, how science works where you have a theory, then you test that theory and you get the results, and then you keep testing it and you keep getting the same results. That's how something becomes true. None of this is. This is theoretical and experimental investigations of space-time. It has shown that time can be distorted and dilated, particularly at the edges of black holes. Just again, one of the dumbest things how did they just come up with that? Why do we all just accept that? And then you think about it, like, that's one of those psychological attacks they do on you. There are people that think there are black holes out there, and at any point, that black hole could suck us up, just destroy us.
We're more than likely to have that giant meteor hit us, though, destroy it.
Throughout history, time has been an important subject of study in religion, philosophy, and science. Temporal measurement has occupied scientists and technologists and has been a prime motivation in navigation and astronomy. Time is also of significant social importance, having economic value, time is money, as well as personal value due to an awareness of the limited time in each day and in human lifespans. Cultural attitudes toward the human use of time are apparent in the verbs used, from kill to waste to pass, and sayings like carpe diem. The concept of time can be complex. How? Multiple notions exist, and defining time in a matter applicable to all fields without circularity has consistently eluded scholars. Doesn't that tell you something? Nevertheless, diverse fields such as business, industry, sports, and sciences, the sciences, and the performing arts all incorporate some notion of time into their respective measuring systems. Traditional definitions of time involved observation of periodic motion, such as the apparent motion of the sun across the sky. The phases of the moon, and the passage of a free-swinging pendulum. Which, again, can be adjusted by where you put the fucking weights and how tall it is and all that shit. More modern systems include the global positioning system, other satellite systems, coordinated universal time, and mean solar time. Although these systems differ from one another, with careful measurement, they can be synchronized. In physics, time is a fundamental concept to define other quantities, such as velocity. To avoid a circular definition, time in physics is operationally defined as what a clock reads. So according to physics, the definition of time is, hey, what's that clock say? The clock says 11 o'clock. That's what time is. Oh, man. Specifically, a count of repeating events such as the SI second. Although this aids in practical measurements, it does not address the essence of time. Physicists developed the concept of the space-time continuum, where events are assigned.
Dude, where's my car?
where events are
Sorry.
what is it? The
Space-time continuum.
no, it's the fuck, I forgot what it's called. It's terrible. It's a really bad, fucking terrible movie. But it has a place in your heart.
It does.
Events like particle collisions, supernovas, or rocket launches have coordinates that may vary for different observers, making concepts like now and here relative. In general relativity, these coordinates do not directly correspond to the causal structure of events. Instead, the space-time interval is calculated and classified as either space-like or time-like. Depending on whether an observer exists, that would say the events are separated by space or time. Again, 2 out of the 3 things they gave us, well, really 3 out of the 3, but 2 out of the 3, particle collisions, supernovas, or rocket launches. Rocket launches, we have to trust them on that, but we can at least sort of see the they put on a little bit of a show. When it comes to supernovas and particle collisions, well, you just have to trust them on that one. Since the time required for light to travel a specific distance is the same for all observers, a fact first demonstrated by the Michelson-Morley experiment, which failed. What are we fucking talking about? The Michelson-Morley experiment failed. The Michelson-Morley experiment was to prove that the Earth was round, and it failed. All observers will consistently agree on this definition of time as a causal relation. The Michelson-Morley experiment was an attempt to measure the motion of the Earth relative to the luminiferous ether. Luminiferous ether. Right, which isn't a thing anymore. Yeah, they got rid of ether. Ether used to be a big part of everything. But in around like the 20s or the 30s, ether just became obsolete, apparently. A supposed medium permeating, yes, a supposed medium permeating space that was thought to be a carrier of light waves. The experiment was performed between April and July 1887 by American physicists Albert A. Michelson and Edward W. Morley at what is now Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, and published in November of that same year. The experiment compared the speed of light in perpendicular directions in an attempt to detect the relative motion of matter, including their laboratory, through the luminiferous ether, or ether wind, as it was sometimes called. Ether wind is a lot easier than luminiferous. The result was negative, in that Michelson and Morley found no significant difference between the speed of light in the direction of movement through the presumed ether and the speed at right angles. This result is generally considered to be the first strong evidence against some ether theories, as well as initiating a line of research that eventually led to special relativity. Special relativity, that's what it's officially called, special relativity. It's special, which rules out motion against an ether. Of this experiment, bitch-ass, fake-ass, piece of shit chosen Albert Einstein wrote, "If the Michelson-Morley experiment had not brought us into serious embarrassment, no one would have regarded the relativity theory as a halfway redemption."
You know that they did.
If it hadn't have failed, no one would think his theory was any good, basically. Michelson-Morley type experiments have been repeated many times with steadily increasing sensitivity. These include experiments from 1902 to 1905 and a series of experiments in the 1920s. Yada, yada, yada. More recently, in 2009, optical resonator experiments confirmed the absence of any ether wind at the 10 to the negative 17 level. What does that even mean? They confirmed the absence of any ether wind at 10 to the negative 17 level. Of what? What are we talking about?
We have cilantro and we have red onions, jalapeno.
Together with the Ives, Stilwell, and Kennedy Thorndike experiments, Michelson-Morley type experiments form one of the fundamental tests of special relativity. But they literally told you here, it failed. It was a failure. Okay. General relativity does not address the nature of time for extremely small intervals where quantum mechanics holds. Where quantum mechanics holds. In quantum mechanics, where you guys can't see. We have this special technology over here. We can use it, and then you just have to trust what we say. You guys, you goyim, you don't get to use that. No. In quantum mechanics, time is treated as a universal and absolute parameter, differing from general relativity's notion of independent clocks. The problem of time consists of reconciling these two theories. As of 2024, there is no generally accepted theory of quantum general relativity. It's kind of like string theory. It's kind of like all that shit that these really high-paid, super smart theoretical physicists and all this other, it's what they work on all day. Your Big Bang guys, they literally work on shit trying to prove something that they fail at. Like, the whole string theory thing has been around for a long time, and yet they can't prove it. Like, how many times would you have to eat a piece of dog shit thinking it's going to taste good, and it doesn't, before you realize dog shit doesn't taste good? You know how stupid that is? How many billions and billions and billions of dollars go into this bullshit? Grants and special this and special that because they're super smart. When all of your arguments involve, oh yeah, just trust us. We have special colliders, hadron colliders. You ever looked into the history of the Hadron Collider? Did you know that there's a Hadron Collider in New York? I didn't. Apparently we built a large Hadron Collider here in New York. Huh. Well, New York and other areas, I guess it goes under. But the Large Hadron Collider over in Geneva or wherever the fuck it is. At its deepest point, it's 575 feet below the surface. And I believe that they started building that shit in the 60s. So, how? Were they using a shield? Tunneling shield, All right, so I'm really interested. I think it's crazy that I can't find, there's not a history of time section. Measurement. Generally speaking, historical methods of temporal measurement or chronometry have taken two distinct forms: the calendar, a mathematic tool for organizing long intervals of time, and the clock, a physical mechanism that counts the passage of time. You know what? Let's look up clock real quick. A clock, or chronometer is a device that measures and displays time. It measures time, does it? The clock is one of the oldest human inventions. That's interesting. And the thing is, like, again, think about how intricate clocks are.
I've always wondered, how did somebody figure that shit out? That's insane.
Especially like stopwatches and shit like that. Or not stopwatches, the little pocket watches. You know, you open those fucking things up and it's like, what company was manufacturing microscopic gears back in those days? Meeting the need to measure intervals of time shorter than the natural units, such as day, the lunar month, and the year. Devices operating on several physical processes have been used over the millennia. Some predecessors to the modern clock may be considered clocks that are based on movement in nature. A sundial shows the time by displaying the position of a shadow on a flat surface. Yeah, but isn't that wrong on all but one day of the year? I mean, you know, depending on where the sun is in the sky, that doesn't seem like that would make... I never understood sundials. As a kid, I would just be like, but the sun is in different positions. Like if I go out at 11:54, or I go out at, say, 10:30 in the morning, in the middle of the summertime, it's a lot different than in the middle of the wintertime. The shadows, the place, all of that's different. I've been doing it for years. You can see it if you pay attention. So where I live in Michigan, and most of Michigan, is set up on a grid system. And like, if you just look out there, that stop sign, the roads running this way are north and south, and then it's east and west. It doesn't deviate. It's like supposedly precise. And it's interesting when you start paying attention to sunset, because starting with the December solstice, like, it's based on the solstices in some regards, I guess. But the reality is, you'll see the sun set in multiple different locations. And it's not like it goes here, 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 and it gets here, and then it goes here. It doesn't do that. Some days it'll set more northwest than others. Some days it'll set more southwest than others. But during the summertime, it's always north of the, like east-west mark. But then once you get past that, it starts setting, like in the wintertime, it's going to set south of that directly west mark. Even though it sets in multiple different positions. Like, again, if it was like here one day and then here the next day and here the next day and here, that would make sense. But it definitely doesn't do that. And I've always, one thing I always wonder is, so in the summertime, we're told that the earth tips forward, right? So that the northern hemisphere gets more sunlight. I'm in Michigan, and around, after about 8 o'clock at night in the peak summer months, I've gone live many times where it's 8:30 or so, and I'll have people in Florida talking about, why is it light where I am and it's dark where they are? And for me, I can still see the sun above the horizon. It's not even like it's dipping past the horizon. It's above the trees. It's above the houses and shit.
Florida's in the same time zone as us.
Yeah, they are.
I said,
Yeah,
they
oh,
are.
yeah. And Florida is the same time zone as us. Now, I get it. I get what you'll say. But even the people on the west coast of Florida and the people on the west coast of Florida are like almost exactly where we are as far as Michigan goes. But what's even crazier is that my Australian friends, where it is 10 to 12 and a half hours ahead of us. So if it's 8:30, 9 o'clock here, then it's, 7 to 9:30 there, right? How come they can see the same sun I can see? I'm in Michigan. If you drill straight through the earth from Michigan, you're going to hit Australia on the back end or somewhere close to it. How can I see the same sun as the people in Australia can? And it's not like I'm seeing waning sunlight. If we're on a ball flying through space, I mean. I know when we have the eclipses, people in Australia and New Zealand, they still see the moon in their sky. How is that possible? There's a range of duration timers, a well-known example being the hourglass. Water clocks, along with sundials, are possibly the oldest time measuring instruments. A major advantage occurred when the invention of the Verge escapement, which made possible the first mechanical clocks around 1300 in Europe, which kept time by oscillating timekeepers like balancing wheels. Traditionally, in horology, the study of timekeeping, the term clock was used for a striking clock, while a clock that did not strike the hours audibly was called a timepiece. This distinction is not generally made any longer. Watches and other timepieces that can be carried on one's person are usually not referred to as clocks. Spring-driven clocks appeared during the 15th century. During the 15th and 16th centuries, clockmaking flourished. The next development in accuracy occurred after 1656 with the invention of the pendulum clock by Christian Huygens. Oh my God. Christian Huygens invented that too? Holy shit. Are you guys familiar with Christian Huygens? Let's see here. Christian Huygens, you love these kinds of guys. Lord of Zeeland, Dutch, born April 14th, 1629. Of course, we know that. Died July 8th, 1695. Was a Dutch mathematician, physicist, engineer, astronomer, and inventor, and is regarded as a key scientific figure in the scientific revolution. In physics, Huygens made seminal contributions to optics and mechanics, while as an astronomer, he studied the rings of Saturn and discovered its largest moon, Titan. As an engineer and an inventor, he improved the design of telescopes and invented the pendulum clock, the most accurate timekeeper for almost 300 years. Let's see. There he is. You guys want to see how pretty this guy is? These guys how come they always look like it's really fucking cold? Can you imagine how heavy all that dress is?
They look like fucking fruitcakes.
They look silly as shit. All these, today's guys are all metrosexual, blah, blah, blah. What the fuck? How come everybody from history looks like they're part of a Shakespearean play? Walking around in tights and shit. I mean, look at all this frilly, goofy shit and his hair. And
do you know how long it takes to put all this shit on?
How do you clean it?
Yeah.
How does he clean his hair? And I mean, showers and shit don't exist. But this, you'll see, like, this is exactly what they all look like. Look at Newton. Look at whoever. They all look like this. They're all standing there. Most of the time, they got their hand in their little shit. This dude, he's making the hand symbol. He's doing like that. Just coincidentally, he's just doing like that. Like, it's just stupid. It's just stupid. All right. Huygens first identified the correct laws of elastic collision in his work Du moto comprum ex precision, completed in 1656, but published posthumously in 1703. So he's dead. Somebody finds his works and then publishes them at the publishing house. And now here we are all these years later and we know about it. In 1659, Huygens derived geometrically the formula in classical mechanics for the centrifugal force in his work, De Centrifuga, a decade before Isaac Newton. In optics, he is best known for his wave theory of light, which he described in his Who Gives a Fuck 1690. His theory of light was initially rejected in favor of Newton's corpuscular theory of light until Austin Jean Fresnel adapted Huygens' principle to give a complete explanation of the rectilinear propagation and diffraction effects of light in 1821. Today, his principle known as the Huygens-Fresnel principle. I mean, again, think about what you think 1600s, 1800s looked like. So how did Augustin Jean Fresnel even have access to Huygens' work? Who was producing all of this information and then spreading it around? What process went, we just overlook it now because we're just so accustomed to things. But the idea of this guy was even dead before his shit was published.
You know what's rude? Your car, your garage, there's lawn. That's rude. Neighbors keep their lawn nice and clean. So should you, of course. Social contract.
Huygens invented the pendulum clock. What else did he invent? He also invented refracting telescopes. And there's more shit. There's more. Hey, Constant, and his dad was Constantin Huygens, right? And his dad is the one who invented. His dad was a Golden Age poet and composer, and his dad invented. Sure, you don't have to say shit. Yeah, these guys are the. I mean, it's so silly to think about us knowing, Sir Constantin Huygens, Lord of... He was born on September 4th, 1596. We know that. And his mother said that he was going to be a great man and blah, blah, blah. Like, it goes back to the whole Tesla narrative, right? The whole thing about Tesla is he was born in an electrical storm. He's a peasant. His family is peasants. They live out in the middle of nowhere, and there's an electrical storm happening. And the midwife said, "Oh, this child is going to be, bad." And his mother was like, "No, this is going to be a child of light. This is who was taking down the notes? Who was writing down the conversation between Tesla's birthing mother and the midwife. It's fucking stupid, man. It's fucking stupid. And the thing is, like, I think people get the wrong idea, right? Like, I'm almost like, I'm almost offended by it all, right? Because I believed it. I was so opposed to religion my whole life that I immediately just accepted science as being, the opposite of religion, so it must be true.
A lot of people do that.
I know a lot of people do that. And interesting for me to be here, and especially, after watching Hollywoodism, and the more research, the more looking I do. I mean, there are guys out there, lots of guys, like My Lunch Break and Lucius Aurelius and Mind Unveiled. These are great channels. And they do nothing but point all this shit out. They're better at it than me because they're good at having their computer going so you can see a bunch of shit, and instead of you looking at their face, you can see a bunch of stuff. They're much more technically savvy than I am. And at the same time, they play it safe. They don't say anything they're not supposed to say. They're constantly apologizing to the Jays for having to even bring them into the conversation because they don't want their shit to get demonetized or their hard work to get blocked. And it's funny too because it's like they're really no different than your average person. They just believe they've put more into it. But if you go to them and you say, look, all your research, it's all bullshit. Because it's the thing that, like, you see it as almost this like confusion that they have. They constantly point out how the same names are used and the same story, the fire narrative and all these things. And yet it's not like you figure out that it's supposed, like, it's all chat GPT bullshit. So anything is bullshit. Once you get to that point that, like, resets happen and shit, you have to understand that everything prior to the reset is going to be bullshit. Just like everything after the reset is bullshit because they don't tell you about the reset. All of you religious people and all that shit is nonsense. And when you look at the narrative, the idea that it's nonsense actually makes sense. Because they don't try to say that people in the the oldest books, the oldest religious scriptures prior to the convenient find of the Dead Sea Scrolls in 46 is, I can't remember what they're called, but it's the 900s. The 900s are the first, written scriptures. That's where the earliest shit comes from. And that was the earliest shit prior to 46. The Jays say the reason that they don't have an extensive narrative is because their history was oral. It was all just passed down orally. Because that doesn't leave room for interpretation or mistakes. But it's like the more you really start looking, you think I'm surprised that I'm going back far enough that I'm running into Christian Huygens. I can't tell you how many different inventions and just narratives I've looked up that Christian Huygens makes an appearance. I've read his name so many times because that's how this whole thing works. And the problem is, so many of you are sitting here arguing or dismissing what I'm saying because you're like, oh, well, there's history buffs in there. And it's like, but you don't, do you ever like think about how history books even get to us? And when you look at our books compared to what books used to be, apparently they used to be able to mass produce books with all kinds of pictures and fancy writing and, you know.
They handwrote each page, of course.
Yeah, but how? How could you handwrite each page and produce, you know, you're talking thick ass books with intricate drawings on each page and all that. How could you mass produce that? And it's like, it's just interesting how people associate, like they gravitate to what they like. And when they like something, everything else can be bullshit, but the thing they like, well, no, that's true because they like it. Instead of, you know, you're somebody who thinks this is wrong and this is a lie and this is corrupt and this is this and this is that. But then this one little piece, that's probably true. Why do you think Tartaria is such a prominent thing? Isn't it strange how Tartaria really started taking off just as Israel really started killing people? You know, the Tartaria thing goes back to like COVID-ish. Tartaria starts sort of appearing. And I know a lot of you have only followed the Israel situation since October 7th of 2023. But when you look past October 7th of 2023, you'll see that this genocide has been going on for a long time, but it absolutely ramped up, you know, with COVID. And so I can't help but think, imagine if all of the attention that's on Tartaria right now was instead focused on the Chosen, the Jays, Israel, the genocide, all that shit. Do you really think it would still be as prominent? Do you think it wouldn't, you know, it wouldn't have caused quite a bit of backlash at this point? And think about it. What would you rather focus on? Do you want to focus on Tartaria, where everything you look up, you're validated? Fuck yeah, see, I told you when you look this up, there'd be a fire story, and then they built the building in 2 years. See, I told you. I'm right. Look, you're right, you're right. Tartaria constantly tells you you're right. Or go after the whole Israel J thing where you're constantly shut down or told that you're not even allowed to talk about it. Not that you're wrong. Not that, oh, did you think about it this way? Or no, you just can't talk about it. Which thing is going to give you the best returns? The best emotional, you know, the stuff that matters, the endorphins type of returns. Right? You're going to focus on the thing that gives you the good feelings. The thing that's not controversial. Yeah, people get, and you go, well, why do you get mad over that? Come on, we're just talking about buildings. It's not a big deal. But when it comes to Tartaria, the thing that, like, the underlying current in all of it is who is hiding it from us? Why don't you guys ask that question? Or you do ask that question, why don't you answer that question? Because the answer is really obvious. It's these piece of shit Jays. And they have to, like, if the Tartaria narrative comes out and there's no more Jesus and there's no more God's chosen people, well, then how do they get that blind eye that they've been getting? Because you can't, it's such a weird thing to me. How does anybody believe in Tartaria and resets and still think the Jesus narrative has any validity whatsoever? Has he ever made sense? Never. Nope. I'm literally reading to you what they want you to know, but I'm not making sense. You know what we need? Yeah, we need it. Go deal with it, please. Oh. Hey, guys! You know my solution, right? Okay, Nathan, if you're doing your Nathan thing, you're not going to get to play, okay? All right, so let's take a quick break. We're going to talk about ad hominem. Because ad hominem is what you guys are seeing in the comments, right? Ad hominem, short for argumentum ad hominem, refers to several types of arguments that are usually fallacious. Fallacious. It's a weird word. Often, currently, this term refers to a rhetorical strategy which the commenter, you guys, attacks the character, motive, or some other attribute of the person making the argument, me, rather than the substance of the argument itself. This avoids genuine debate by creating a diversion, often using a totally irrelevant but highly charged attribute of the opponent's character or background. The most common form of this fallacy is person A, me, makes a claim of fact, to which person B, these clowns in the comments, asserts that A has a personal trait, quality, or physical attribute that is repugnant, thereby going off topic. And hence, person B, the commenters, conclude that person A, me, has their fact wrong without ever addressing the point of the debate. Many politicians use this. A common misconception is that an ad hominem attack is synonymous with an insult, which I never took it as that. I always look at this like, look at the shit I'm talking about. First of all, who other than piece of shit pedo Jays are going to be mad at me for talking about this stuff to begin with? Who is going to waste hours, day after day after day, suckling my teeth because they hate me so much? How does that even make sense? What sort of life is that? That sounds horrible. Oh, I just come here to troll. Oh, you sound like a real winner there, bud. You got nothing else going on in your life that you got to go around I'm going to try to fuck with people. Make everybody as miserable as I am. Yeah.
That's a life. I'm jealous.
But this whole idea of the insult, everything they say that doesn't address what I'm saying is them saying, you're right about what you're saying, but I don't like your haircut. You're right about what you're saying about us and how horrible we are, but you're not allowed to say that. Don't you say that. That's literally what all of this shit means to me. Every single one of these fucking troll clowns that make my feed better. They build my numbers. They help the algorithm grow and grow. Thank you. Thank you. Especially since you're not very good at proving me wrong about anything, which I know actually kind of sucks, because I'm actually one of these people who likes losing, right? Because it doesn't happen a lot. So when it does happen, I'm like, oh, cool. I get to, I have to try to be better now. I have to learn something new. I'm not some crybaby who can't take losing. And if somebody were to, point out something I was getting wrong or something, I'd love to hear it. Back to it. A major stimulus to improving the accuracy and reliability of clocks was the importance of precise timekeeping for navigation. The mechanism of a timepiece with a series of gears driven by a spring or weights is referred to as clockwork. The term is used by extension for similar mechanisms not used in a timepiece. The electric clock was patented in 1840. 1840. The patent for the electric clock was in 1840.
They had
And
already built bridges and tunnels under rivers, so why not?
well, but I thought in the 1880s they put the pneumatic clock system in because there wasn't an accurate electric system for keeping time.
Just because you got the patent doesn't mean you got it out.
The electric clock, blah, 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 and electric clocks were introduced in the 20th century. So some guy got a patent for an electric clock
Before it was invented.
60 years before it was invented.
I mean,
How does that even work?
I've heard of getting patents for shit before they're actually
Yeah, for sure.
manufactured.
For sure. But how does this work? How do you get a patent for the thing when you can't present a working example of it? Becoming widespread with the development of small battery-powered semiconductor devices. Well, and then there's the whole quartz clocks and quartz watches. How do those all work? Where the little piece of quartz somehow powers the thing? The timekeeping element in every modern clock is a harmonic oscillator, a physical object resonator that vibrates or oscillates at a particular frequency. This object can be a pendulum, a balance wheel, a tuning fork, a quartz crystal, or the vibration of electrons in atoms as they emit microwaves, the last of which is so precise that it serves as the definition of the second. The vibration of electrons in atoms as they emit microwaves. Clocks have different ways of displaying time. Don't care. Okay. History of time measuring. Well, etymology. Don't care about that. All right. Sundials. Nathan! Okay, that's your last warning, dude. Sundials. The apparent position of the sun in the sky changes over the course of each day, reflecting the rotation of the earth. Shadows cast by stationary objects move correspondingly, so their positions can be used to indicate the time of day. No, that doesn't make any sense. A sundial shows the time by displaying the position of a shadow on a usually flat surface that has markings that correspond to the hours. Sundials can be horizontal, vertical, or in other orientations. Sundials were widely used in ancient times with knowledge of latitude and well-constructed with knowledge of latitude and a well-constructed sundial can measure local solar time with reasonable accuracy within a minute or two. Sundials continue to be used to monitor the performance of clocks until the 1830s, when the use of the telegraph and trains standardized times and time zones between cities. See, that's another thing you keep seeing in these old things, is where, like, they say one thing, we weren't able to do this until that point. And then you read a little bit later and it's like, oh yeah, we were doing this at that point, but it was just different. It's like they step on their own toes all the time. Many devices can be used to mark the passage of time without respect to reference time of day, and can be used, I don't care about hourglasses. Water clocks. A water clock for gold beating gold leaf in Mandalay. Yeah, that's cool. Water clocks. Water clock. That's a water clock. Water clocks, along with sundials, are possibly the oldest time.
What? No.
Are the oldest time measuring instruments, with the only exception being the day counting tally stick. The day counting tally stick. What? I gotta see what this is. A tally stick was an ancient memory aid used to record the document numbers, quantities, and messages. The tally sticks first appear as animal bones carved with notches during the Upper Paleolithic. A notable example is the Ishago bone. Historical reference is made by Pliny the Elder, 23 to 79 AD. Just how do we know anything from those guys? It's just so stupid. We're talking about 2,000 years ago, and whatever they wrote on survived. How? Wasn't written in stone.
Or was it?
It wasn't. Or was it?
It was written in bone, not stone.
Right. About the best wood for use for tallies by Marco Polo. Oh, and by Marco Polo, 1254 to 1324, who mentions the use of the tally in China. Tallies have been used for numerous purposes, such as messaging and scheduling. So basically, they just wrote shit down on a stick. Okay. It's not going to be very accurate next week, but okay. Giving their great antiquity, where and when they first existed is not known and is perhaps unknowable. But we do know that Pliny the Elder existed from 29 to 32, and we know what he wrote, and we knew what he looked like, and we knew what his family was like, and we knew who his parents were. The bowl-shaped outflow is the simplest form of a water clock and is known to have existed in Babylon and Egypt around the 16th century BC. So I don't know if that's, I think, is that 1500, minus 1500 BC, or is that minus 1700 BC? I'm not really sure how that works. Oh, look, we have an absolute total pedophile piece of shit on here posting the Israeli flag. That's a pedo. That dude right there is a pedo. He fucks with kids. It's amazing. Basically, at this point on my feed, if you post the Israeli flag, you're acknowledging that you're a pedo. So please go right ahead. Everybody will know it that you are a pedo. And look at how desperate these pieces of shit Jays are. They can't actually debunk or address anything I say, but they want to try to trick people. Oh, we'll show them. Post the flag. Acknowledge that you're a pedo. Go ahead, do it. Go ahead, acknowledge that you're a pedo who supports the killing of the genocide. Go ahead. I'm all for it. Let's see. But the earliest dates are less certain. Some authors, however, write about water clocks appearing as early as 4000 BC in these regions of the world. What fucking authors do we know of from back then? The Macedonian astronomer Andronicus of Cyrus. I always think that's fucking funny. Why did everybody have one name? Was there only like one Pete of Cambridge, John of Cambridge? And when that guy died, they were like, oh shit, there's an opening. You can be the new John of Cambridge. The Macedonian astronomer Andronicus of Syrhus supervised the construction of the Tower of Winds in Athens in the 1st century BC. -1. You know, also, no, not Cyprus. No, I would have said Cyprus. Cyrrhus. Cirrus?
Cirrus.
Cirrus?
Pronounce the H.
Well, you might hear. How do you know? Why would they have a second R? Which housed a large Slepsidra, Clepsydra, Clepsydra, I don't know. Inside, as well as multiple prominent sundials outside, allowing it to function as kind of an early clock tower. Yeah. The Greek and Roman civilizations advanced water clock design with improved accuracy. These advances were passed through the Byzantine and Islamic times, eventually making their way back to Europe independently. The Chinese developed their own advanced water clocks by 725 AD, passing their ideas on to Korea and Japan. They independently just developed their own shit that's exactly the same. While building a lot of the same buildings and believing a lot of the same things and cutting penises and yeah, all these countries did the same shit. Some water clock designs were developed independently, as some knowledge was transferred through the spread of trade. Pre-modern societies do not have the same precise timekeeping requirements that exist in modern industrial societies, where every hour of work or rest is monitored and work may start or finish at any time regardless of external conditions. Instead, water clocks in ancient societies were used mainly for astrological reasons. Because back in the day, the average person knowing what the fucking star positions were was super important. While never reaching the level of accuracy of a modern timepiece, the water clock was the most accurate and commonly used timekeeping device for millennia, until it was replaced by the more accurate pendulum clock in the 17th century Europe.
Jesus Christ, look how pregnant she is. Oh my. I think so. Jesus.
Fuck that. How does your body ever recover from that?
My mom had a friend that had triplets. She was in a wheelchair for the last 2 months of the pregnancy. She was so fucking big, her legs were hurting too much to walk.
Right, but how does her body, her stomach, how does that all come back?
It doesn't. All that skin is just floppy. You have to have it cut off. Your muscles are just destroyed.
What a crazy shit. Ugh. Crazy. Bitch had 8.
How do you
Octomom.
have 3 babies when you have 2 boobs? How does nature do that?
It's not like boobs just
You
keep
gotta
producing.
rotate them, cuz. Oh my God. Could you imagine 3 Nicks?
Nope. I can't imagine.
Oh my
the
God.
idea that the woman, my wife, this normal broad, I mean, she's just a broad, suddenly, because I shoot my spunk inside her, this time, I've done it a bunch of times, but this time, she then becomes this factory that makes a parasite that eventually gets so big it has to explode out of her body. And then it's not even done. Now, this woman who I've been with forever is now making food come out of her tits. How fucking crazy is that? And the little thing that she made can't get enough of that titty shit. Oh my God. Give me that colostrum. And then she just stops. She just stops and goes back to being a normal chick.
But all fucked up.
All fucked up. And then, her uterus becomes the cancer bomb it's supposed to be. And you got to get that shit removed. And wow, chicks. That's what you get. That's why you get free drinks for a few years.
Oh, that's worth it.
All right. Those free drinks, that you pay for that shit. Trust me. When your taint, when the space between your asshole and your vagina rips, and or they have to cut it with the episiotomy, because they appease it. They're appeasing your butthole, stretching its. I mean, come the fuck on. Your butthole and vagina walls rips apart,
So you
and they have
more room.
they have to sew it back
So it
together.
becomes one canal for a moment.
What happened before they were able to sew it back together? Chicks just died?
They don't really do it anymore unless they have to, but you're supposed to rip, and that's how you heal better. If you rip naturally, if they cut you, it takes a lot longer to heal from that. So they just let you rip now. They don't really do the appeasement.
And then, yeah, pop that shit out, get back to work, bitch. Back out in those fields. Stop making excuses. But see, you bleed every fucking month. Don't get me started on the periods, man.
Triplets, that, like I said, you have 2 boobs.
Islamic civilization is credited with further advancing the accuracy of clocks through elaborate engineering in 797 or possibly 801. See, again, you look at this, you read this, and you just go, oh yeah, well, 797 to 801, that's only 4. That's only 4. Yeah, that's like 1,200 something days, 1,400 something days. You know how much can happen in a 4-year period? The Abbasid Caliph of Baghdad, Harun al-Rashid, presented Charlemagne with an Asian elephant named Abdul Abbas, together with a particularly elaborate example of a water clock. Pope Sylvester II, never heard of Pope Sylvester before. Pope Sylvester II introduced clocks to Northern and Western Europe in around 1000 AD. It's 1000 AD. Northern and Western Europe is like, oh, what time is it? What time is it? And Pope Sylvester's like, boom, clock. There you go. You're welcome. The first known geared clock was invented by the great mathematician, physicist, and engineer Archimedes during the 3rd century, -3 BC.
I always think it's sort of the stone.
Always. Archimedes created his astronomical clock, which was a cuckoo clock with birds singing and moving every hour.
He was an owl.
It is the first Carillion clock, as it plays music simultaneously with a person blinking his eyes, surprised by the singing birds. Fuck yeah, he invented this shit with his no power tools. You know, engineering all of these intricate little gears and, tiny, tiny little gears with precise little teeth on them. And no power tools necessary for that shit. Gosh, the pedo flag sure stopped coming quickly, huh? Go ahead. I encourage you, please, out yourself. System of 4 weights and strings regulated by a system water container with siphons that regulate the automatic continuation of the clock. You know what I'd like to know? I'd like to talk to a modern day clockmaker who is skilled in the old ways and how he knows that kind of stuff. And I'd like to ask him if he thinks there's any way a person without specific clockmaking schooling and training could just come up with a really intricate clock. I mean, isn't that insulting? Oh yeah, all you got to do is you just got to, see a different clock and then be like, oh, I can improve on that shit. Yeah, why not? The principles in this type of clock are described by the mathematician and physicist Hiro, who says that some of them work with a chain that turns a gear in the mechanism. Oh, well, that explains it then. Another Greek clock, probably constructed at the time of Alexander, was in Gaza and described by Procopius. The Gaza clock was probably a metroscopic meteoroscopian, i.e., a building showing celestial phenomenon and the time. Yeah, we're all just totally okay with that. Like that clock that's in Europe or wherever, where all the different things come out and they like hammer shit and all that. Yeah, that's not like new. They were just making that shit on the top of that big fucking huge many-story building, and
I've never understood how all that works. It's just so intricate.
it's so intricate. And you think like, okay,
And I don't like looking at that intricate stuff.
well, but it's hard to think how we can do it. Thinking how we can do it is like, man, we must be pretty fucking awesome. But how did these people do it before they didn't have electricity?
Well,
They didn't have lights.
However, we have already proven in our own home experiment that kids that are homeschooled generally are smarter. They learn more. They have more
I disagree.
focused
No, I
attention.
disagree. Our kids are smarter because their parents are really fucking smart.
Well,
That's it.
right,
That's it.
but- and back then, they didn't have the distractions of the video games and the
So what? It doesn't matter.
all the extracurricular shit that we could go movie theaters, shit like that.
They also
They're
didn't
much
have
more focused.
internet.
Right.
How did they get the book? Okay, so I decide I want to build a clock. How do I do that? I find a book on
Teach
clock
themselves.
making?
No, they teach themselves. They work with the gears and they work with the
Where do you get the gears from?
make them.
Out of what? The metal you happen to be really good at making into tiny little gears for some reason. You don't have experience, any training in it.
Go to the village blacksmith and be like, "This is the design of something that I want made. Here's the material."
But what is your
and I will train
inspiration?
you for the fucking leather shoes that I make.
What is your inspiration? But if you're making leather shoes, then that's what you're doing with all of your time.
No, that can be their hobby, their passion. Oh, I got to make 3 pairs of shoes today. That leaves me with a little bit of time to be able to work on this, which is what I want to do.
Yeah, well, never mind the fact that they probably had to figure out where they were getting their food, because it wasn't like there was stores. We're talking about people that were told that, to get to and from the city where they worked in these giant marble buildings that are intricate and blah, blah, blah. And then they had to get on their horseback and ride back home to their wife, who had been making dinner since 11 o'clock that afternoon. And I mean, no.
Just because it seems hard and miserable doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Kinda it does. When you can't show me the example. I'd love to see someone. Again, I think you're just insulting clockmakers. I think clockmakers go to school for a long time and they learn a lot of shit. Or again, it's passed on to them by somebody. Yeah, but you can't. How could you learn the other side and still do this side? We're talking about people who life was really difficult.
Yeah, but they also had, community where, this person handled this part of what the little village needed.
Sorta. I mean, that's what we're told.
And they all work together.
But like, if I'm the shoemaker, right? I do a shitload more for the community than, say, the bed maker.
Maybe.
Bullshit.
I make a good night's sleep to be able to have the
Right, but you make a bed. You don't make hundreds of shoes per year. That'd have to be difficult.
Well, that's the wood guy. He doesn't just make beds. He makes chairs and tables and
Yeah,
they make the furniture for
right.
the house.
Out of hand tools. So somehow these guys were just super fast and super not and you would think, like, back in that time where you don't have all the accoutrement that people have today and all of the devices that people have today, you would think it would mean that the mass production of things would be a less quality,
But you have to remember,
because they wouldn't have the time to sit there
they're
and.
not making it for 500 people.
Of course they are.
No, they're not.
Of course they.
They're
Angela,
village and their people.
The
Maybe
The Thames
40
River
people
was
do.
getting 1,000 people a day to come pay a shilling.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean they all lived in the same place.
Okay, so now we're saying that all of these
Little
people,
villages.
little villages all over,
Maybe
are.
50 people.
That is not. See,
100 people,
the
whatever.
problem with what you're doing right now, and I hate saying it, is you're just ignorant. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're just sort of supposing because you want it to fit your narrative. I want it to fit my narrative, so each of these places only had like 50 people. No, that's not what they tell us. And then when you think about it, you go, okay, so they do have 50 people. So of those 50 people, one happens to be really skilled at making shoes, one happens to be really skilled at making furniture, one happens to be really skilled at building fucking buildings. One, like, I mean, these great churches. Well, if you're building this great church like the church in Detroit that has the sister church over in Canada, and it's from the 1700s. If you were to go, I couldn't even show you guys pictures to give you guys accurate descriptions of how big that church is. You've seen it. I don't know which one it's called, but big red church, big huge roof, big huge spire, all this shit. Where did they get all the materials from? How did they pulled up in a canoe? The narrative is that they pulled up in a canoe, and then they built this giant mega church. And there was only at the time a few, maybe 100 people, who knows. But at the same time, they needed to build a sister church just as big, 500, 5,000 feet away or something. Precisely this. You want it to be something, so you just sort of fix the holes. Oh yeah, no, they were just trading for the goods, and yeah, they were just good at it. You look at all this old ass furniture. We're not talking about old shitty furniture. We're not talking about the shitty chairs that we have that I can't imagine ever being around 100 years from now, let alone 1,000 years from now. And yet you're seeing these huge ornate bed frames, and it's all individually carved, every little piece. And of course, you can't fuck that up. It's all one piece. It looks like it was made by a machine. But nope, it was made by this guy who was just mass producing bed frames and shit, giant bed frames. He was just really good at it. He was really good at cutting all this, at getting all this wood brought to him, then cutting it all to fit these huge pieces, sculpting all of the wood in all these different ways. No power tools, again, just hammers and chisels and shit. Sanding it all down, making the lacquer or whatever that goes over it, staining. That guy was mass producing those bed frames. It just doesn't work.
Again, I don't think it was mass production in the form that we think of mass production.
How long do you think it would take to make something like that?
If you're a skilled tradesman, I don't even know. I'd have to ask Rob. I really don't know. I look at it. Okay,
Right,
so
that's what
Gibbs
I'm
made a
saying.
boat
So
by
you
hand in
don't
his
know.
basement, and it took him several years to do it by hand in his basement. That's
So you're
one boat.
saying you don't know, but it had to be this way. Like these are it's easy to come up with the sort of the narratives. It's when you start breaking down these narratives down to the nitty gritties that it starts really falling apart. Because you go, well, you know what? I don't know how long it would take to do this. And I don't know how they would get all the buildings, just the buildings themselves. Where are they getting the materials from? With the Thames River, right? At one point, they had a little hiccup, so they had to put 50,000 more bricks on top of the thing. Where do 50,000 bricks come from?
Brickmakers, the masons.
Right. Okay, so how do you think you transport 50,000 bricks?
Several horse and buggies.
Yeah. But you don't see that. You never see that in the narrative as to who are the brick manufacturers? How are they manufacturing bricks at such an incredible level? and then dispersing them all over the place. How were the people ordering the bricks? You know, if the brick maker is,
That was by carrier pigeon. They attached
I
the
mean,
pigeon, and the pigeon took it to the brick maker, and he
Yeah.
said, "Okay,
sure.
this guy."
You really think that's what it is?
1,000 bricks.
You really think carrier pigeons were a thing? No, they weren't. They weren't. How could you, again, take this to the brick maker? How would the pigeon know where the fuck you were supposed to go? And let's just say the pigeon didn't make it. How would you know? You know, how long would you be waiting? Gee, I haven't gotten my return.
In that case, I would probably send like 3 or 4 pigeons just to make sure something went through.
But to think like,
But then that guy might think that's several orders, so that might really fuck you.
even in today's society, if you had to walk 10 miles, that would take you all day.
It takes our neighbor about an hour to walk from Walmart to here.
That's a little over a mile. Yeah, I mean that's about right.
She's not a fast
And
walker.
and that's with roads, well-maintained roads.
Roads.
Come on, why do I have to keep doing this, Nathan? Nick, stop. Nathan, why does this have to keep happening?
And it's not a game of he who complains the most wins.
Behind your
either.
back, Nick was being a jerk. He was doing.
Okay. What about you? What about what you're doing? You always want to tell.
Nick keeps on thinking.
Okay, I don't care if Nick thinks he's good. He's supposed to think he's good.
No, listen. Nick keeps on thinking he's the best, so he's trying to like tell me to do stuff, or I must do
That's
this.
not it. That's not it. No, he wants to be a part of it. He's letting you be mostly in control, and then he's saying, hey, I want to do this or I want to do that. It's okay if he thinks he's the best. He's supposed to. You're supposed to. Stop making... I already told you last time was the last warning, and I'm going against it. Next time I do, and for real, next time I have to stop and talk about you being a jerk, you're done, okay? So you're not listening. You're listening for your video game to see what you're doing, right?
I paused it.
Stop talking to him. I'm talking to you. What did I just say to you?
This is your last line, but I'm going against that. This is your last chance.
Okay, so you know it. It's your last chance. Don't do anymore. We love to overestimate what people in the past were capable of doing. We romanticize it. That, oh, they were just so much better than us. They were just so much. Look at the average 8th grader's test from 1900, right? It's one of my favorite sort of weird things. Because you think the narrative is that we didn't have schools and shit back then, not like we do. And in most cases, the mother is who taught the children. Yet, we're also told that women weren't allowed to be educated. So how were all the mothers teaching their sons to be these great men while also, had to get up at 4 a.m. so they could start making the biscuits by hand and collecting the chicken eggs and they were 14 when they got married and started popping out kids. But hey, they're also sitting the kids down with a curriculum that I guess they just created. They go down to the corner store to pick up a bunch of learning books and workbooks and shit. Oh, my son is in 2nd grade. You're just you love to accept the narrative without giving it the same scrutiny that you give someone like me. You want to scrutinize every single thing I say based on me looking like this. I guess I don't even know, because you don't really scrutinize what I'm saying. You just say a bunch of shit. But like, think about how apt all these bot profiles, if let's just pretend they were real, right? All these real random people who live all over the world who watch me every day. They come here to tell me, when I'm wrong. They never question any of this shit. They just all accept it all. Yeah, the uneducated mothers taught the kids. Yeah. The Masons, they just existed. I mean, you hear about all these boarding schools that used to exist. You hear about these orphans and all this other shit. You hear about these there's a lot of narratives in the story that overlap each other and don't quite make sense. And then you hear stories like they didn't know how to build a bridge, so they were pulling railroad carts with half boats on them over mountains with donkeys. They figured out that whole system before they figured out how to make a bridge. And the guy that invented the suspension bridge, he just did. He's another one of these guys who was a religious scholar who came here, immigrated to the United States and started his own like plantation of his own people. I forget what that's called. The settlement, I guess. And after a few years of being a farmer, he was like, I don't like this anymore. So he started building bridges. And he built the suspension bridge with the wires that he bent by hand. And he just built it by himself in 8 months. And the 8 months is from August to April in Philadelphia. And the thing about me is that I go, okay, well, if the suspension bridge story is a lie, they're all lies. Yes, that's it. They're lying. It's a manufactured narrative. That's what you're not letting yourself understand. It's a manufactured narrative. That's why it's all so suspect. That's why it's all such bullshit. And it really, when you look at who, Hollywoodism, again, go watch Hollywoodism. Go watch Hollywoodism. When you can, instead of like shitty, sort of supposing ignorantly, like, oh, well, it had to be that. Go watch this movie and then explain to me how every single thing I say that has to do with it, because I'll come at you afterwards. You watch the movie, you then educate yourself as much as you can, and then I'll come at you. And you'll see if you can just answer all the questions. With anything other than, well, it's possible, I guess. Explain all the yada yada bullshit. And what people don't understand is, like, because they controlled Hollywood, both East and West Coast Hollywood, they control everything. Everything. Our historical record is because of them controlling things. They only let what they wanted get to the surface. And mostly that shit is all just made up chat GPT kind of bullshit. I mean, it's insulting because so much of it you have to go, I don't know. And yet you still believe it. How did they build tunnel systems under Paris and everywhere else that existed back then? The oldest accounts of the cities talk about the tunnel systems underneath them. You don't just build tunnels and you don't just dig into the ground and then it just stays a tunnel. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't just support itself. Oh, well, yeah, you dug it in. Now it's a tunnel and it's going to last forever. But like I say, they gave us Tartaria. They give us the reason we're all so skeptical of history is because we're breaking through, no doubt. But instead of jumping to the fucking front and then working back, we're just slowly trying to work our way forward. We're not looking at what the obvious connection to all of it is and who is in control and who designed it all, who gave us the narrative. You know, so many people think that they're still not allowed to talk about this, that, and the other, or that anti-Semitism is a bad thing. You'll anti-Semitism. Well, do you know what the fuck the word means? Can you talk for a minute?
What was the last thing you said?
Anti-Semitism.
Oh. Yeah.
Explain experiences. No.
I mean, I don't know. A lot of it was so subtle that I didn't even realize it was going on at the time, I guess. But I have experienced the notion that there is a sense of better than. And I think at the time I wrote it off as because they were wealthy, successful, and I wasn't at their level. That's why I was looked down upon. But because technically my ex was a converted Jew, not by his own choice, his mother's. And they treated him the same way. So it must just be a class thing. But after learning more and then reflecting back on that period of my life, I can honestly say it was more than that. They looked down upon him because he wasn't a natural born Jay. And he didn't even choose to convert. It was, again, he was forced at the age of 5 or 6. So, and he wasn't practicing. So, because I look back, his mother was treated the same way, and she wasn't born into it. She converted for her husband, and they treated her the same way. And she had the money that they did, or at least access to. But, she would have these, whenever that community would have parties, they would have hired help. A server type person, a butler type person that would get the door, somebody that would stay in the kitchen doing the dishes and the cleanup, sometimes a bartender. So even when my ex-mother-in-law would have these parties, I hate calling it that because they don't really do the fucking work. They pay other people to do the work, so whatever. They still would treat her, even though she's the hostess, she would still be treated as part of the serving staff by the other guests, and she would do her best to play it off and delegate out whatever was being asked of her. If nothing else, to try to prove, see, I'm one of you. I could just have somebody else do it too. But they still never accepted her. And it was disgusting to look back on it and see, and since then, I guess, I don't keep up with that family, but from what I've heard, her husband passed on, and I don't even know, like, would she remain active in the J community because she doesn't have that obligation anymore? Or, I don't know. They had a daughter, and even she, because technically her mother was not, other than converting, even she wasn't as accepted. Now, you know, she carried her father's name and blah, 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 but your ex-mother-in-law, she signed herself up for the life of being subservient. Very sad. I've seen it happen to people in my life too. Um, yeah, she really did, and it was in order for her to have a comfortable life. Oy vey. Yeah, I'm talking about my ex-mother-in-law. Because that's the reference that I have, you know. Because I was with my ex for a significant amount of time, I got to see all the bar mitzvahs and the bat mitzvahs and have like a personal experience with that. And again, like I said, at the time, I didn't feel like it was because they were Jay and I was not. I honestly thought it was a money thing. But it was quite interesting to see, like, but then again, you write it off. Our brain fixes so much because of our programming. You know, I did remember going through like, wow, how is it that all these people have all this money and they're successful and wealthy? And, you know, they must, oh, well, you know, because my ex-in-laws were wealthy and it's just the circles that they travel in. So that's why I'm being exposed to this part of it. I'm sure there are poor parts of this community too. That's how we, you know, fix it in our head. I'm living in a hotel room. Yeah, yeah. No, my ex is not a J. He was, his mother married a J man when he was 5 or 6. He had a brother a year or two older than him. She converted and then forced her boys to convert. So I had them bar mitzvah and all that. But by the time that I met my ex, he didn't believe in anything. Like it just kind of ruined all religion for him. For I think maybe to see like your mom flip flop so easily, give up her beliefs so easily for other beliefs, and then realize like, ew, it was about the money, and that's just kind of gross. So those beliefs must not be that important and you know all encompassing. If my mom was able to just throw him away, you know, so he didn't believe in anything. But you know, at times had to try to play the like, you know, he got bar mitzvah, and you know, like get you a bunch of money. I don't know. Quiet after reading half of what? Part of it is I don't have my goddamn glasses on, so. Okay, so is this what you're saying? Living in a hotel, smoking crack with a guy who rants online? Rents online? You mean rants? Yeah, you're the model of society. I'm not in a fucking hotel room, you fucking morons. Do they put hotels in the middle of, you know, a neighborhood? There's just a hotel stuck in the middle of a subdivision. Crack. Have you ever encountered somebody that smokes crack? Have you ever tried to have a conversation? When I was, you had my first apartment, we had a neighbor, much older lady. She was in her 40s, and she did smoke crack. And after she'd smoke crack and she'd come out into the hall if we encountered her, like, it was like speaking to a neurotic person. She would blah, 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 go thing to thing, and like you could barely keep up with her, and you'd get done talking to her and you'd just be tired. So, you know, clearly you have no idea what you're talking about.
I'll definitely pray to all the Jesus.
I never said I'm trying to be a model of anything, you fucking idiot.
Oh yeah, don't bother with the comments. The comments are
We did homeschool. And yes, the school system today is horrifying.
We did homeschool because we had to.
Well, no, that we could have sent them to school, but we chose not to because
It was already homeschool.
the well,
We could. Oh yeah, we could have sent them to partition school.
right.
Right.
where they had to sit at their desk for 8 hours and
Prison
not
school.
move. And yeah, no, but yeah, we did, and they got a
Well,
much better
she did.
education. And
I
you know,
didn't.
but it almost killed me because you know we have 2 kids. They're close in age. They're both boys, and it was extremely challenging for me. And it's hard
Didn't
if you're
have to be.
considering it. It's really hard to go from teacher to mom to teacher. It's really hard. It's a lot harder than it seems like it should be.
That's why you don't work for your father or for your parents or whatever. Because you expect them to treat you like a kid, like you're one of their kids, but they have to treat you like an employee.
It's a very hard thing to do. So if you've got strength, patience, an extreme amount of compassion,
I don't think you should.
Then do
No,
it.
I don't think so.
It also depends on the kids' ages and their
I
social
think
structure, and
almost like obviously what they're doing is teaching regurgitation and teaching false narratives and a bunch of bullshit for sure. But the most important aspect of it is the social aspect.
well, that's
Is
what-
learning how to be around girls. Learning how to not be a dumbass. You know, us making fun of each other and shit like that is how we curb bad behavior. And in this society where, somebody's feelings getting hurt is like the end all be all. My kids, whenever it comes to anything, the response, they never get the, oh, did he call you names? Oh, here, let me go talk to his mommy or daddy. And, never.
Oh, he called you a dumbass, so?
Right.
Who cares what that little idiot said?
Right. That's it. Do you know if that kid's dad beats him every day when he gets home? No. Well, that could be the case. He could have a really horrible childhood, a really horrible existence, and he just bleeds that out onto you. You don't know what the fuck people's motivations are. And then especially when it comes to like this online bullshit. For any of you dumb clowns to think that any of you affect me. Anything you say, like, I know what I look like. I know I've never had an issue with females or dudes, really. Gay guys love me too. To pretend like I'm gonna let some random dudes, mostly dudes, tell me that I don't look the way they want me to look, and I'm gonna get all upset. Oh, that guy called me ugly. That guy with the fake profile, he called me ugly. That guy who would never go live himself, he called me ugly. Come on, why would I give a shit?
Okay.
It's hard to teach them that because that's not how society teaches them. Society says if one kid is allergic to peanuts, then nobody else in the school can have peanut butter and jelly. Not that kid has to be isolated for that half hour. Oh, I'm sorry they have to feel like they're different. Guess what? They're fucking different.
Maybe they won't vaccinate their kids and have subject their kids to all kinds of crazy allergies.
Shh.
Just saying.
There's plenty of stories of peanut allergies killing people prior to. No. And think about it. Have you ever heard of a famous story of somebody dying from a peanut allergy? Like prior to.
No.
Never.
Growing up, I think we encountered one person that was allergic to nuts, and that was like my grandma's friend's grandson or some shit that we play with every once in a great while.
It's like how growing
we
up.
all ate lunch because they had 4 kids and we, there was me and my brothers, so there was 6 of us. The 5 of us would go sit in the living room and eat our peanut butter jelly, and he would go sit in the kitchen and eat his whatever the fuck he ate. And then when we were done, we had to wash our hands, and then we played. And it was really fucking. The kid knew he didn't like it, but he didn't want to die. So, but that was the only time my whole childhood that I ever encountered somebody with a peanut allergy.
It's just like you never heard of any. Like the only person I remember dying from AIDS when I was growing up was like Freddie Mercury, Arthur Ashe, and Pedro from The Real World. And 2 out of 3 were gay guys. And yet I'm supposed to believe that promiscuous sex and drug use causes AIDS. Well, how come Motley Crue isn't dead?
All three of them were dead.
Arthur Ashe was. Oh yeah, Arthur Ashe was gay.
They were all gay.
Right. But like, how come all those '80s rock stars didn't die of AIDS? Especially since all of them were so fucking bisexual and shit. It's just because it's not real. Something else is going on. AIDS just sort of disappeared, huh? It's strange. My parents only knew one kid with allergies to eggs, but when I was in school, there were one or two kids in every class, nuts, dairy. Yeah, but your generation.
People, all these restaurants have to provide gluten-free menus now because there's so many people allergic to gluten. They're not allergic to gluten. They're allergic to the fucking poison that.
Can you imagine if we were allergic to gluten this whole time? Wheat?
Can't eat fucking bread?
Are
you
you
kidding me?
what? That's like a staple. People survived on bread and
bread.
water. Right.
So that should say something between the vaccines and the shit they're putting.
But
in
we
our
can't.
food.
That's the one thing. Like, other than the J's, you start talking about the pokes, and that'll get you in trouble for some strange reason. And that's me. You know, again, reading what they want. I know I've seen it. It's me reading what they want us to know. When you read what they want us to know, how many of you know who Dr. David Sensor is? His last name is Sensor. I highly, highly suggest you do everything you can. Just go look up Wiki. Just look up David, Sensur. And just see how interesting that narrative is. Exactly. The only reason we survived so many famines throughout history was because of wheat. Or so we're told. Or so we're told. You know what? I'm going to do it anyway. I want you guys to hear who this guy is. It's really interesting.
You'll know how real it is because of how it tastes.
David Judson Sensor, Sencer, sorry. November 10th, 1924 to May 2nd, 2011, was an American public health official who orchestrated the 1976 immunization program against the swine flu. I'm not even going to say much. I'm just going to read it to you as it is. Between 66 and 67, he was the longest-serving director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. In this capacity, he did nothing to stop the Tuskegee syphilis study in spite of ethical concerns raised internally. From 81 to 86, he was the Commissioner of Health of the City of New York. Commissioner of Health of the City of New York. Sensor was born November 10th, 1924 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Grand Rapids is the first city in the Union, or in the United States, to fluoridate their water. Isn't that strange? I'd pay you to debate. You don't do a good job on here, so what the fuck would be the purpose? You have all of the advantage here. All you have to do is make a good point, make sure it's spelled right, and click enter. Nobody can tell if I read your comment and it shakes me, everybody's going to be able to see it. I have to respond in real time. You could take as long as you want to come up with whatever you needed to, but you can't because you're stupid. His father, who specialized in furniture, died in Sensor's early life. Think about this. So his mother, Helen Furness, because she has a different last name, raised him. Why would she have a different last name? After receiving scholarships to Cranbrook School and Wesleyan University, he left Wesleyan before graduating and enlisting in the Navy. So he never graduated high school. He got scholarships to Cranbrook. Single J mother. This kid's getting a scholarship. Do you know?
My friend just inquired about sending her daughter there for high school. $40,000 a year for high school. I talked her out of it.
That wasn't good. Subsequently, the Navy sent him to medical school at the University of Mississippi. Boy, that's amazing. So this guy, he got free schooling to Cranbrook, to Wesleyan University, where he didn't even graduate. He joined the Navy, and the Navy was like, no, you're too special. Let's send you back to school. So now he goes to the University of Mississippi. Subsequently, the Navy sent him to medical school at the University of Mississippi. He completed his medical degree at the University of Michigan. How's that work? During his stint at the University of Michigan, tuberculosis consigned him to the hospital for a year and a half. He also got TB. Amazing. This incident motivated him to study public health. Thought he was already a doctor. Sensor would later go on to attain a master's degree in public health at Harvard University. This guy went to Wesleyan, the University of Mississippi, the University of Michigan, and Harvard. And he has a single mother. Who we don't even know, like his father specialized in furniture, but he died. So his mother, who had a different last name, raised him. What? Cool, man. Go play. Be cool. Nick, be cool. In 2009, he was awarded an honorary BA degree from Wesleyan. Why? He left the school and then they gave him an honorary BA. Some, 40 years later? In 1951, Sensor married Jane Blood Sensor. Her name is Jane Blood Sensor. I mean, I assume he didn't marry a chick with the same last name, but maybe he did. I don't know. With whom he had 3 children. Susan, a pediatric oncologist, and an oncology nurse practitioner, and Stephen, chief legal officer for Emory University. His kids all went on to be amazing.
Proud daddy right there.
It's called a maiden. Yeah, because in 1924, people were known to have kids without getting married. And then, everybody was like, oh, yeah, that's your mom. She's got a last name. That's the different last name. That's cool. In 1955, Sensor joined the U.S. Public Health Service. In 1960, Sensor became the assistant director of the CDC. And in 1966, the director. In this capacity, he played a major role in 1974 in establishing Emory University's Public Health Department, which later became Rollins School of Public Health. So, Emory University is where his son is the chief legal officer. Gosh, that's amazing. What an amazing coincidence. The Tuskegee syphilis study continued under Sensor, even when ethical concerns were raised internally in 1966 and 68. Sensor did nothing to stop the experiment until the press got involved in 1972. The Tuskegee syphilis study was conducted between 1932 and 72. For 40 years, they were giving black people syphilis. Think of how much they gave on a group of nearly 400 men they gave syphilis to. How many people do you think those unknown men who were unknowingly given syphilis spread syphilis to? That is fucking crazy. During Censor's administration, the CDC grew considerably, addressing for the first time malaria, nutrition, tobacco control, as well as family planning, health education, and occupational safety and health. Additionally, Censor prepared instructions for the quarantine of astronauts returning from the moon, which was suspected to harbor extraterrestrial pathogens and doesn't anymore. Remember, you have to be 14. Nowadays, somebody falls out of the sky and people carry that broad like nothing's there. She fell out of the sky in the middle of the field. The agency's most successful undertaking was the smallpox prevention project in Central Africa and later the rest of the world. This was among the CDC's first significant dealings with international public health, which the CDC presently directs. At the forefront of the effort was William H. Fogg, who said, "I never asked Censor for anything that he didn't deliver." He said you couldn't protect U.S. citizens from smallpox without getting rid of it in the world. And that was a new approach. People in the field got all the praise, but he was the unsung hero. He just kept providing what we needed. So back then, they had no concept that if you wanted to get rid of something here, you had to get rid of it over the world because, people would bring it here. No, none of the doctors thought about that before this guy, huh? This is when it gets good. After the swine flu outbreak of 1976, in which over 200 recruits at Fort Dix, New Jersey, were infected, Censor resolved that all U.S. citizens should be immunized, precipitated both by his apprehensions of a reoccurrence of the 1918-1919 flu plague, which is kind of familiar, right? Because it's always interesting to me how when COVID came out, they didn't tell us, hey, don't worry about it. In 76, a coronavirus broke out and we were able to vaccinate it away. So don't worry, we've got your back. Why didn't they say that? Why did they, instead of talking about 76, immediately talk about 1918, 1929 Spanish flu killing over 25 million Americans and blah, 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 blah? Why did they do that? If the 76 swine flu thing was real, and by President Gerald Ford's incitement, the decision was later criticized as rash and wasteful. It led the U.S. Public Health Service to request up to 200 million doses of the poke. However, the anticipated pandemic did not emerge, and raising percentages of the 45 million poked were affected by Guillain-Barré syndrome, which provoked over 24 deaths. But that's not, death. Guillain-Barré is polio. They just renamed it. So when you see all these things that say, come get this, come get that, you got to, come get a flu, this or that, increased risk of Guillain-Barré syndrome. Well, you don't know what the fuck that is. So you just don't even hear it. If they were to say you have a risk of getting polio, nobody would take it. Right? But because of this unnecessary, it wasn't a thing. There was no swine flu. 45 million people got the medicine that they knew caused GBS. And I don't know if they'll say it, but the actual approved medicine wasn't the one that was given. The medicine was approved, and then they went back and reworked it before they gave it to all the goyim. Censor was both condemned and supported. How could you be supported? How come he didn't face charges? Having worked with censor at the CDC, epidemiologist James W. Coran explained, Dave Censor made a hard choice, and he did it for the right reason, to protect the American public. He was trying to protect the Americans had there been a swine flu epidemic, and absent one, there was bound to be criticism, of course. Nobody tells you to take Tylenol every day, even though you don't have any aches and pains or headaches. Taking unnecessary medicine is a bad thing. That's what turns it into drugs. It is better to err on the side of overreaction than underreaction. In 1976, the federal government wisely opted to put protection of the public first. Yeah, but it didn't protect them. When you make people take something for something that isn't there, and 24 of them die of it, which is 24 were reported. Do you know how many people died and it wasn't reported? Or got sick and it wasn't reported? There were over 4,000 lawsuits regarding this. And immediately, the government passed the legislation, like it went through the House in no time, that the Goyim were no longer allowed to sue the government or medicine makers, medicine manufacturers. That's where that whole legislation comes from. That's where that whole thing, why nobody's allowed to sue Pfizer or anything else, because of this particular thing. But hey, it's okay. That year, Legionnaire's disease, then unidentified, killed 29 attendees at a Philadelphia American Legion conference. Censor sent 20 epidemiologists there to investigate, and months later they attributed the disease to a type of bacteria in the air conditioning system in the hotel where the conference was held. Well, then how come only 29 attendees got it? How come the people that work there every day didn't get it? How is that an acceptable thing? Oh yeah, it was because of bacteria in the air conditioner. Bacteria in that air conditioner that was unknown. They didn't know what it was doing, what the cause was. It only affected that one fucking, that one conference? Were there no other conferences held there? Were there no conferences held prior to it? How could you possibly say something so stupid and it gets passed as the truth? When Jimmy Carter's presidency began, Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare Joseph A. Califano dismissed censor as part of the normal turnover of staff when administrations change, though it took until May 1977 to replace censor with William Fogg. Guillain-Barré syndrome is a rapid onset muscle weakness caused by the immune system damaging the peripheral nervous system. Why would the immune system do that? Typically, both sides of the body are involved, and the initial symptoms are changes in sensation or pain, often in the back, along with muscle weakness, beginning in the feet and hands, often spreading to the arms and upper body. Symptoms may develop over hours to a few weeks. During the acute phase, the disorder can be life-threatening, with about 15% of people developing muscle weakness of the breathing muscles requiring mechanical ventilation. Some are affected by changes in the function of the autonomic nerve system, or the autonomic nerve system, which can lead to dangerous abnormalities in heart rate and blood pressure. I just want to see something here. Polio is an infection disease caused by the polio virus. Approximately 75 cases are asymptomatic, mild symptoms which can occur, including sore throat, and fever. In a proportion of cases, more severe symptoms develop, such as headache, neck stiffness, and paresthesia. These symptoms usually pass within 1 to 2 weeks. A less common symptom is permanent paralysis and possible death in extreme cases. Years after recovery, post-polio syndrome may occur, with a slow development of muscle weaknesses similar to what the person had during the initial infection. Polio only occurs naturally in humans. It's only associated with pokes. Anyway, we'll have to do this one tomorrow because I'm fucking done. I'm tired. This takes a lot more out of me than you guys think it does. But tomorrow we'll talk about it. So go get your free download. www.the-bilderberg, BILDERBERG-group.com. I'm also that's in the description. It's free. Just when it asks you how much you want to pay for the download, just put 0 or be cool and put money in. That'd be cool too. There's going to be a link to our Facebook page, a song called The Samson Option, but we have lots of them. And there's also going to be a link to what I believe to be the most important thing you can watch, which is Hollywoodism. And I hope all of you go watch Hollywoodism. It's your homework. Go watch Hollywoodism. You might want to brush up on your Guillain-Barré syndromes and polios if your goal is to debunk me and all that. Go ahead and educate yourself because you're stupid and you don't know better. But go get your free shit. Have yourself a wonderful day. And you pedophiles, kill yourself.